Hello fellow Tenno, if you have clicked on this video it means you're looking at how to farm Gauss. Well, look no further as I'm about to explain the best current method to farm and obtain the components required for you to assemble this Warframe. As Gauss can only be farmed from Kappa on Sedna, you will need to play through the disruption mission for at least 3 rounds, as you will need to wait for a C reward to roll. These roll with a 7.84% chance for each of the 3 Gauss pieces, meaning you can expect to see a Gauss piece drop approximately every 12 C reward drops. The reward drops for disruption are slightly different to your normal reward rotation. C rewards can be dropped from both round 3 if you defend 4 conduits successfully and round 4 onwards if you defend 3 or 4 conduits successfully. For those of you who are unsure on how the disruption game mode works, I have a video up on my channel that explains this game mode and I have included a link for it in the description below, so go and check that one out. However, a brief overview for this is that there are 4 conduits coloured red, white, blue and cyan that appear around the map. These require keys to activate which are dropped by special enemy units. On most disruption missions, this is Xmas units. Activating the conduit will provide a random effect that either buffs or debuffs the Tenno or strengthens enemy forces, as well as spawns a demolition unit. This is a certain distance away from the conduit, but when it reaches it, it will explode and self-destruct, destroying it, causing that conduit to become a failed. Once you've successfully defended a conduit by killing the demo before it is able to self-destruct the conduit, you can move on to the next round. However, the more conduits you successfully defend on each round, the better the reward you will get. Next, let's go over the build requirements for each part of Gauss. For the neuroptics, you will need 1 argon crystal, 1600 rubido, 6200 salvage, 2950 alloy plate, and 15,000 credits. For the chassis, you will need 3 Radian Centrium, 3 Heart Nif, 6 Star Crimson, 55 Grokdril, and 15,000 credits. For the systems, you will need 3 Radiant Zodian, 3 Marquis Feist, 70 Marto Cardia Spores, 85 Thermal Sludge, and 15,000 credits. Finally, once you've assembled all 3 of these pieces, you can build the main Gauss frame with an additional 3 Orokin cells and 25,000 credits. Now you know how to build the Gauss frame, let's go over his abilities. For Gauss's passive ability, Gauss draws upon both his energy reserves and his state-of-the-art electro-telekinetic battery to fuel his abilities. Gauss has access to 80% of the battery in its default state. Activating Redline will grant access to 100% of the battery. The battery, displayed as a gauge meter above his ability icons, acts as a secondary resource that charges or drains depending on the ability he uses. Mac Rush will increase the battery charge by 10% per cast and an additional 1% per enemy hit. Kinetic Plating will decrease the battery by 1% per second that it is active, along with decreasing between 1 and 5% per hit received. However, it will gain charge at 0.25% per melee hit to any enemies. Thermal Sunder will increase the battery by 10% when casting cold, decrease it by 10% when casting heat. And finally, Redline will decrease the battery by 2% per second. Gauss's first ability is Mac Rush. When cast, Gauss sprints into action, propelling himself forward at supersonic speed towards the aiming reticule and instantly charging his battery by 10%. Tap the ability key to dash forward 12 meters, hold down the ability key to rush forward continuously at 25 meters per second whilst rushing. Gauss can also sustain Mac Rush by holding down the forward movement key instead. Release the hotkeys for Mac Rush to halt Gauss in his tracks. The next ability is Kinetic Plating. This allows Gauss to shield himself in a barrier of kinetic energy with one swift motion, protecting himself against incoming impact, puncture, slash, cold, heat and blast damage types, as well as their respective status effects, while also becoming immune to stagger and knockdown effects for 30 seconds. While active, kinetic plating drains 1% battery per second and 1 to 5% battery per hit received, to reduce affected damage by a minimum of 20% at an empty battery and up to 100% at a full battery. 5% of damage absorbed per hit is converted into extra energy for Gauss. Melee attacks while kinetic plating is active will also restore 0.25% of the battery. Kinetic plating deactivates on duration end or by manually pressing the ability key again. Gauss's third ability is Thermal Sunder. This is subsumable to Helminth at a cost of 46% oxides, 80% pheromones and 80% bile. When Thermal Sunder is cast, Gauss manipulates the kinetic energy around him to create an area of extreme temperatures with an initial radius of 12 meters. This can quickly shrink to a final radius of 6 meters and last for up to 15 seconds. Gauss's final ability is Redline. This allows Gauss to overclock his battery, blasting away enemies within a few meters around him and gaining access to 100% of his battery charge for 30 seconds. During Redline, Gauss grants himself a bonus weapon fire rate by a minimum of 15% at an empty battery and a maximum of 75% at a full battery, while melee attacks by a minimum of 8% at an empty battery and a maximum of 40% at a full battery. Reload speed is also affected by this, with a minimum of 10% and a maximum of 50%. And casting ability speed is also affected by this, with a minimum of 10% and a maximum of 50%. While active, Redline drains 2% battery per second. Redline deactivates on duration end or by manually pressing the ability key again. That covers just about everything there is to know for farming and obtaining Gauss, along with a brief ability overview. Thank you for watching this video, and if you've enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe for more.